Katie Kempner, and welcome to Perspectives here at Advertising Week on the Huffington Post stage. Perspectives is a series of inspiring conversations with remarkable working women who are leading busy lives. And right now, I am talking with Kathleen Hall of Microsoft. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you again.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So we'll jump right in.
Okay.
And I think the best place to start is just to ask you a little bit about your career and where you are right now in your job.
I'm in an awesome place in my career right now. You know, you work really long and really hard to get to the place where you want to have a degree of control over outcome. And also from figuring out as a mom, you kind of get it figured out. So it's almost like loving being my age. I'm loving where I am in my career.
So you said figuring out being a mom, and I remember one of the things that we talked a little bit on the panel was that you do have kids and you do have a huge job.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about, you had some great ways that you sort of balance everything together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for all of us with children because you never feel like you're doing enough. Anything you sacrifice for one, you feel like you're taking away from the other. But really, I think, you know, you it's a cliche, but you set your priorities, cliche. You set your priorities and you decide, like, this is where my boundary is on certain things. So one of the things I always kind of worked into my schedule was I wanted to participate in things like sports or teaching CCD, which is a Saturday commitment. So I try to make the things that I knew I was likely to be able to get to and, you know, kind of work around those key sets of commitments. And then there were certain things I just knew I'm not going to be at every curriculum night and I'm not going to be at every single school speech. But I picked the things that are really important to me and important to them and tried to focus on those.
Tonight is back to school night at my kids' school.
Yeah,
and every year during advertising week, it's back to school night when I'm away.
There's certain things.
I miss it all the time.
Yeah.
But now, let me ask you, I mean, Microsoft is a technology company, so what role then has technology and devices and being able to be always online played in you being able to do some of the things that you want to do in your life?
Well, I think it depends how you use it. I think at first it felt a little intrusive, right? We were always on, always accessible, expected to be. And then I think it's kind of matured in the business where I think we kind of have day parts, right? I think that you can kind of shut off more in the dinner time to homework time, but then you can check in at 9 o'clock after the kids go to bed, or, you know, check in Sunday night so you're not facing an onslaught Monday morning. So I think if you leverage it the right way for you, it can be not a burden but an asset, and that's kind of how I choose to do it. And people know when I'm off. I mean, I go to a mountain home sometimes with no connections, and they know Saturday's a bad day sometimes.
Are the people that work for you, are they empowered to do that too? Or is it sort of something that you earn, and when you're starting out, you have to always be on? Because I think that there's a sense starting out, like, I need to answer as soon as someone gets in touch with me, I've got to get back to them.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I do think in the early stages of your career, you're more of a catcher and you're proving yourself. So you want to prove that you're accessible and you're, you know, there for emergencies and that kind of thing. So I do think when you're in your early stages, you want to be more on than off, which can be challenging because it can tend to be when your kids are young, right?
Exactly.
And I think as you progress, you kind of pass that baton down a little bit. I think though you're always setting an example, and that example should be a positive one. So I try to respect if someone says, you know, this is my thing. This is my balanced thing. I want to always leave at 4 and be on from 7 to 9. You got to respect that kind of flexibility. It works in spades in payment back to you, I think, because people appreciate it so much.
And you have a lot of interesting ways, actually, of mentorship and being an example for other women. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I early on in my career, it sort of became a poster child because I'm the Title IX girl, right? I was there early and fast. And what I found quickly that I didn't feel like I benefited from, and therefore didn't think others would, is traditional mentorship. Let's set up a coffee, get together once a month, and we can talk about what's bothering us. I find that not as useful as having people shadow you, work with you, bringing younger women along in big events like this. I have a protege with me here who's just getting experience and exposure. So more hands-on mentorship through experience than sort of traditional, you know, one-on-one mentorship in a closed room.
So this might sound like a little bit of a funny question, but if somebody is listening and they would like to have that kind of relationship with somebody, but they don't, do you have any tips to how they could find a mentor within their company or anywhere else?
What works for me really is when someone clearly articulates the benefit they're trying to get out of it. Like they have their own vision of what they're trying to accomplish, so the onus isn't on you to design and making sure that you're sort of curriculum, you know, designing for that person. So really taking ownership of your expectation and the outcome and finding the right kind of personality and talent match, I think, is key. It's proactivity.
So when we had done the panel last year at Creative Week, we were talking about women and creativity and women creatives and why aren't there more, and
Right.
there's a 3% conference, which is amazing. And the conversation keeps getting more and more elevated. There's no question about that. But do you think, and I've asked this to a number of successful women like yourself, do you think we're having the right conversations?
You know, I'm not sure, because I think we tend to stay in the theory realm a lot versus reality. Like, I'm a creative woman. That means I have to be on shoots for 10 days straight in foreign countries, and I have 2-year-old twins. How do I handle that? Like, that's a different level of conversation than,
Right.
Are there enough women executive creative directors? You know, so I think the altitude of the conversation needs to be a little more real for people to help them understand how you get through that, or what models you might want to look at. Some people are big outsourcers. Some people, like me, my husband chose to stay home, and that worked for us. But you can look at alternative models and say, okay, tangibly, that's how I can handle this. I think that would be a better conversation.
That's an interesting setup, and it's one I've heard a lot in very successful women where, you know, their partner has decided, actually, I'm going to just take over some of these other roles and it'll work like that. How did that sort of, if you don't mind me asking, come about
No,
in
it's fine.
your family?
Well, in my family, this is kind of my husband's second time around, so he had children from a previous marriage, and having twins was a big trigger, because let's face it, daycare alone is expensive, but twins is a challenge. And he basically felt like he kind of missed it the first round and said, you know what, I think I can do this. And I'm like, okay, we'll try that. And we did a combination of my husband and help in the beginning, but he managed. And it's so reassuring to know when you have that last minute, got to go to this dinner, or I got to hop on a plane. There's no extra layer for me of that crazy logistic management. That adds pressure for a lot of people. So I feel like I'm very fortunate. Now there's trade-offs. You trade off income, and it's never exactly 50-50, no matter how much the woman gives. You still feel like, oh, there's still a lot left for me, but it's been pretty good for us.
Yeah, why is that? Why are there...
There's just certain things they can't do. I love him to death, but like, he's not going to sort the winter and summer and what doesn't fit them anymore. So there's piles of clothes over. That's always going to be you, because he can't do that by proxy. But can he get them to and from soccer, and can he laundry? Guy's an awesome laundry. He's learned how to cook. But there's just that other, like the papers and the homework. It's still me, because that's where my natural talents lie. So it still feels more than your fair share, but it's way better than it would be if I didn't have him to rely on, for sure. Yeah.
So I like to just end my interviews by asking if there's one piece of advice that helped get you through your career to where you are today that you could share with us. What is it?
If you get up in the morning and you don't love what you're doing, don't do it. Because all of the other pieces you have to put in place to make it work have to have a reward at the end of it. And I have been I'm on my 31st year in this business.
Wow.
And I am still loving what I do. You don't love it every second and every day, and there's frustration, but in general, you got to have a passion for what you do. So that's one piece of advice. The second piece of advice my mother gave me, and it was this: don't play hero. And what she meant by that is get help. Like, no one is going to give you a gold star at the end of the day because you did 17 loads of laundry, packed them for camp by yourself, and dusted while you should have been sleeping. Outsource some of this stuff. No, you got to be able to get some help once in a while. And I didn't take enough of that advice, and I think I killed myself early on. So those are my two pieces.
Well, they're both terrific, and thank you so much for talking with me.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Ooh, as it relates